Culture Gone Bad is back with a very special episode, which is different from our usual focus on sort of contemporary updates and events. Today's special episode is dedicated to our conversation and a mini debate on the topic of religion. Ooh. And
I mean, I look like a church myself. I swear I didn't undress like this for this episode. It's just because in London it's unbecomingly hot.
It's
so
this
hot.
city is too
We are not
hot.
used to it.
We're not used to, I feel very hot, and I mean, we are very hot as we are, but obviously.
It's God's punishment anyway, so.
God is punishing us for being too hot for this world.
Yes.
Anyway, and the debate we're going to have is contemporary religious practice a path to salvation, to relieve the atrocities of everyday life and find peace with many decisions we take, which we might not always be proud of? And does it bring some, in contemporary terminology, I don't know, spiritual enlightenment or whatever it offers, and potentially promising afterlife opportunities? Or is it a financial capitalist scam which offers you things which will never happen, like unfulfilled promises, and also financial trick to get you to give your resources away because the return promise looks too good to miss out? So
in a nutshell, is religion scam or salvation? That's the question we will try to debate on.
And it will also be available on our Spotify account for our listeners to share their opinion. It will be a poll vote. We also will leave some open comments to share. And we encourage everyone to comment on any other platform such as Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or YouTube. And
we will reply to questions that we received as well.
But we have to be controversial. Give us something as hot as London weather today.
Yes, can I give a suggestion?
Yes.
Can I start with a suggestion?
Ooh, Drupi, go ahead.
Yes,
go ahead.
We've been asked by a kind listener called Renata to suggest some movies, and I want to suggest one movie that is deeply relevant for today's episode. The movie is the Gospel According to St. Matthew's by Pierpaolo Pasolini, because we were asked to suggest movies related to Italian culture. It's a total masterpiece. Is Pierpaolo Pasolini, the director, the one who directed Salò. Is a very prominent.
Is it the one where people I don't know? Is it the one where they're being killed and tortured for hours, unbearable?
He was killed by one of his lovers. He was homosexual. He was an atheist. He was a communist. But he created this movie, which is the ultimate Catholic movie in a way, the ultimate not Catholic Christian movie, because he talks about the story of Jesus, and for the first time he represents Jesus not as a handsome blonde man, but as a man of the people. Pasolini does with cinema what Caravaggio had done with painting, essentially. And it's a major movie. The reason why he uses St. Matthew's Gospel is because, according to scholars, St. Matthew's Gospel is the closest to the truth. Okay, so, and by the way, Mel Gibson, when he did his own movie, The Horrible Passion of Christ, he took direct inspiration from Pasolini, including the location, which was Matera, the city in the south of Italy, which is entirely made of stone. And so Mel Gibson and Pasolini, Mel Gibson copied Pasolini in that choice. And needless to say that Pasolini is a masterpiece. Mel Gibson is, I don't know. It's a splatter movie on Jesus. Okay, back to our...
I think it's a very relevant recommendation from a perspective which I think my point one will be we should acknowledge the contribution of religion is how much cultural, artistic expressions it has inspired. You know, if we wouldn't have religion, we probably wouldn't have developed such intricate architectural styles, because a lot of architectural styles were established as worship institutions to symbolize some meanings and communicate values, which dominated the beliefs of the time. And I think most of the art we have today to analyze what was going on in previous centuries are two types, and predominantly religious art, and most of the art from the past, it's religious. Let's say if you go to National Gallery, and their collection probably starts around 12th century-ish, probably first 10 rooms all dedicated to religion. So that's really good for us, because we can also judge how people dressed and what was the values as well.
Exactly.
And I think second, the part which influenced our culture is money and power, because religion is very tightly linked to power.
Yes, that's undeniable. I mean, the Catholic Church is a state, has been a state for several hundred, for some thousands years, almost 2,000 years, not quite 2,000, but yeah. So, you know, there is loads of power there. Also, probably another thing that we owe to religion, I'm talking to Catholicism, about Catholicism specifically, is the fact that they have preserved ancient culture and ancient manuscripts. They have copied them, and we owe this to the Muslims as well, to be completely honest, because also they kept transcribing Greek philosophy and manuscripts, and, you know, preserving them for us. Yeah, probably though the biggest contribution that all religions bring is the idea that I'm thinking about Judaism as well, is the contribution to philosophical thinking, to answering those very basic questions of humanity: what is life, what are we here for? So there is a lot of philosophical production that cannot be overlooked.
Yeah, but I think also, on the other hand, religion offers you solution for some sort of life decisions, and I think it almost on the edge of moral sort of judgment and preaching of like what to do and what not to do. And arguably some of the values are actually common sense, some are extreme, but our culture is incredibly religious. Even people who are not religious, some of moral judgments are influenced historically by the religious teachings, or were modified to suit their contemporary lifestyle, so to say.
So what does your interest in religion stem from?
Would it be, you know what, obviously, overall, I think it's a very fascinating area, because religion causes lots of conflicts. It definitely also causes a lot of devotion, and it's one of the maybe longest standing institutions, like globally. And I recently been exposed to Middle East, where I observed Islam practices firsthand. Also, I think this weekend on Saturday, where was a big Muslim celebration, and living in East London, I did observe a lot of Muslims practicing. And when on Sunday, I ended up going to Cambridge and attending Sunday morning service at King's College Chapel, which was incredibly fascinating experience, because I think, as far as I understood in our conversation, I think it was Anglican service.
Yeah.
And it was quite, I would say, absorbing and immersive experience. A very popular word with immersive. Everything is immersive. Well, this is probably as immersive as it gets, because it lasts like a couple of hours. And it's very performative. I only had been exposed to Orthodox practices because obviously I grew up in Russia, which, ironically used to be communist country where we only had one religion, communism, but then somehow we managed to bring our Orthodox practices. So I had attended a few ceremonies which are very different compared to everything else before, which is incredibly fascinating. And I think my area of interest stems from the concept of how education today, and supposedly best with the British education, is so religiously intertwined. And I think, to talk about King's Chapel, we have to acknowledge, it's one of the masterpieces of British, I think it's Gothic revival, 15th century architecture, stunning decor, beautiful stained windows, like fascinating. We have Rubens' masterpiece, The Adoration in the center, which is, from aesthetic perspective, splendid, mesmerizing. And we had choir singing, music playing, wonderful. But I was very fascinated by the type of crowd attending it. And definitely a lot of university students and graduates, and the preacher was the dean of university, and I did research on him a little bit. He's got a PhD in theology and religious studies. So I thought how fascinating we managed to sort of integrate such devoted religious practices into the educational establishment, which ironically you would think would, I don't know, maybe it's a very, very one-side-minded perspective, but I think we should be very careful, sort of mixing education with, which, supposed to be sort of not biased, with very dedicated faith and religious standpoints.
But you don't need to have faith to study theology, though. That's a key thing, and also you can be somebody who is an expert in theology without. For instance, I'm extremely interested in theology, and I am as atheist as I could be possibly. I don't have any faith in me, and yet in God. I mean, and yet I do. I'm deeply interested in theology. So, and a lot of people who get degrees in theology are actually just interested in the cultural element of it, because you do learn a lot from it. So that's, but also I think in British society specifically, religion has a very political, there is a very political aspect to British society in regards to religion, because obviously the reason why the Anglican Church separated from the Catholic Church is a political reason. And from that moment onwards, some people argue that the religion in Britain has always been, because the head of the church in Britain is the Queen, has always been a function of politics, a function of power, a sort of, it has always been a support for the power of the Queen. So in some sense, religion in Anglicanism is a sort of godless religion, which is which has one single function, which is to support monarchy and the Queen. And because of this reason, in my experience, a lot of English upper class intellectuals are Catholics, not Anglicans. And I was shocked by this coming from a Catholic country, because in Italy, that is the opposite of being a rebel. If you're a rebel, the last thing you want to be is a Catholic. Okay, except those people who mix Catholicism and communism, which you find in Italy every now and then, but usually they are very basic.
Hold on, explain to me, how can you mix Catholicism?
Oh, in Italy,
communism?
It's possible. You've got we call them the catho-communists, the people who are religious, that they believe in lefty ideas, and they deeply believe that Jesus was somehow a communist himself by wanting equality amongst all men. Bullshit. Oh, everything is bullshit, obviously.
I read the book. You can laugh. I'm reading this book, and in this book, The claim is what Jesus was also a feminist.
Yeah, okay. To me, all those things to me is like calling to call Jesus a communist or a feminist. To me is akin to defining a car as a or the horse as a car with no wheels. Okay, the horse is not a car with no wheels. In the same way, Jesus is not a feminist or a communist. Anyway,
I mean,
sorry. I want to finish this point.
Jesus didn't exist to begin.
Exactly. That's
so
it.
He could be anyone.
So let me finish this point, because otherwise I forget what I'm saying. So the point is this: in Italy, if you are conservative, you tend to be Catholic. In England, if you are a rebel, you tend to be Catholic, and that is because being Catholic is intrinsically in opposition to the Queen, is intrinsically in opposition to the establishment. And I was astonished, and I noticed that some upper class intellectuals convert to Catholicism, leave the church of the communist of communism to join the party of the Catholics, as it was brilliantly written by somebody I recently was reading. So in here, intellectuals tend to convert to Catholic. If they are religious, they tend to convert to Catholicism because it's somehow in opposition to the status quo. And this is only in England, because there is this sort of opposition between Anglicans and Catholics. Okay, sorry. Yeah. And did you like the service?
You know what, Drippy, I liked the ambience. It's very fascinating place. It's very formal, like incredibly formal. They give you a whole book which tells you when to sit up, when to look left, when to face east to see the crucifixion, and so on. It's like we tell you when it's time to go and eat bread, and it's time to drink wine, very COVID safe, considering the rates are going up again. But I didn't agree. Like, I mean, I don't have any stance on what is written in any sort of really a Bible or any readings they would go for. Like, I have nothing against that. I think for me, the point was when a preacher of the day, the guy who is a doctor of theology and religious studies, he got on sort of he got a moment between his preachers. He did a little speech, and in this speech he spoke about Good Samaritan and how there was some experiment done in university about Good Samaritan. And basically there were students who had to do research on this topic, and half of them got put into sort of a created scenario where they had to present their speech, and when a guy in a corridor, hired doctor, stops them and says, I really need help, can you please help me? And basically half of the students were told that they are late, their appointment was moved and they have to present now, and half of them were told that appointment was pushed back and they have 1 hour now. And what it turned out, essentially everyone who was set their appointment is running late, they told guy to, we can't help him. And everyone who was told we have time, we helped him. And he said, you know what, like it was very ironic, because essentially we talk about Good Samaritan, helping someone, but then actually we don't practice that. Anyway, and when she started talking about giving money to homeless people, and he left it very ambiguous if he does it himself or he doesn't. But when he said what they support very excellent charity, and in the end of the service we all should agree to give some money to this charity. So a little, plug, a little ad in the middle.
I think charities are the sign of dysfunctional societies, because charities are the ultimate demonstration. Like, for instance, the British Society has a lot of I think it's one of the countries in the world that has the highest amount of charities, and also the highest amount of money given to charity, which is an amazing thing for a certain point of view. From another point of view, it's the sign of a very unequal society, whereby you need charities to somehow make up for the inequalities. And also you've got people giving money to charity somehow to clean their conscience, in order to
wash away your sins. It's
exactly.
almost like indulgence, it's like you buy money, so your sins. I also, you know what gets me about charity, the charity balls. People drink champagne, dressed up in,
Of
you know,
course.
designer clothes and all the diamonds. And when they give like 1K to some
They
cause.
reinstate by going to these charity events. They reinstate the sort of hierarchy that even formally, as you're saying, with the champagne and jewels, they reinstate the hierarchy that keeps those differences, that keeps the poor in need. There is one beautiful thing that Zizek says about charity, which is every time you give money to, you know, to end the famine in some African countries, you don't realize that you are why trying to solve the problem of food? You are just, if you don't try to do something more to help them in sort of solving the food problem themselves, like education, for instance, etc. Because by solving the problem of food, you're just prolonging their suffering. So at that point, is better if they die before having to go through suffering. So that's obviously, said from Zizek, is provocative, but there is some truth in it. We think about what can clean our conscience. We don't think about what can actually change things. And that's why I think I already mentioned Lacan once in this podcast, when he says that love is giving other people what you do not possess, whereby charity is giving people what you possess. In this specific understanding, love is the opposite of charity, because it's the easy way.
I mean, but anyways, then the service went on with his speech, and after that, he said it almost felt like he decided to go through all the news headlines, and he started talking about what we really pray, what the Conservative Party selects a strong leader when because I think obviously we both know it's graduation season. He said what they really hopeful for all the Cambridge graduates, and I was like, wow, so we only hopeful for graduates close to you, right? Not for everyone's graduating in the UK, like on a minimum scale and internationally. And when they said that we are very concerned with Japan Prime Minister being shot, and after that, he said what we are very concerned about Ukraine and what's happening there, and what we will welcome all refugees. And then everyone in the service started crying.
Really?
Yes, everyone started crying.
Wow.
Full on. And he was, but of course we also care about Syria and Yemen and everywhere else where is war and people have to escape. And I don't know, I was watching this.
Yeah.
Like, I'll tell it as it is. It is white, British, privileged people, you know, either studying in Cambridge or living in Cambridge, having leisure time to dedicate to 2 hours of this performative service. And then it looks like the biggest war in their life is war in Ukraine. And it is fucking atrocious. It is awful. But I was like, I feel like we're having some sort of parallel reality being presented in this speech. But when it all went, okay, let's go back to choir and let's now go back to next prayer.
Yeah, one thing needs to be said for religion, is for Christianity at least, inequalities are not the enemy, because that's where, for instance, religion, Christianity is different from communism. Communism wants to abolish differences, wants a state-imposed equality. For religion, these parities are given by God, and they have to be accepted as they are. Yes, you should help other people, but it doesn't mean that you need... Everybody has their own cross, so to speak.
You have
just
4.
like Jesus, I've got 4. But everybody has their own cross. Everybody needs to deal with their own problems and to their own. And to change this would be to somehow change the ultimate will of God, which is not for everybody to be equal, but for everybody to deal with the differences that were given from above. So in this sense, it's consistent that those people are still wishing, you know, for the salvation of everyone without necessarily wanting their privilege to go, because that's not what religion is about. So from this point of view, I do understand them. You know, for religion, disparities and inequalities are intrinsic in human nature. That's why religion has always been a good ally to power, because it doesn't want to overthrow the system. And that's why, for instance, I believe that communism and religion cannot go together. But yeah, very fascinating, this idea of people crying and having emotional breakdowns.
Everyone was very emotional. Obviously, some children were just brought with their parents. But I watched a lot of these people quite religious, right? Like we didn't even have to open the book. We all knew it by heart. I don't know, dedication, like very devoted dedication. I think it's amazing what people find time in the hectic mental pace of today's world to go and dedicate their time, their emotions, and feel so strongly about it. But at some point, I felt it was so performative, like you have to look a specific way, stand up, sit down. I also felt to some extent, at some point I had an idea, do these people actually believe in it, or where's the product of bringing, just like this child sitting opposite and he will just get used to it? And also, or do we think because of their privilege, of our lifestyle, this is what we just should do, and it doesn't mean do we believe in it or not, it's just part of a performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the whole process is so performative.
But performance, I think you're very atheist. And I am as well, but the difference is that I grew up in a religious family. You grew up in a non-religious family, probably. So for me, even though I'm an atheist, I still see it with the eyes of my religious family. Yeah. And in religion, especially in Christianity, I'm talking about Christianity because it's the one I know the best, and also Judaism I noticed lately, because one of my friends is a rabbi, and sometimes I've been to Shabbat with him, and I saw that the rituals are very uncannily similar to Catholic rituals. And anyway, the performance, the shape is meaning in religion. So the shape is never a performance as in a postmodern sense, in the postmodern sense of simulacrum. In other words, a copy without an original. That's not what religion is about. In religion, it's the copy of an original, and the original is the Last Supper, is Jesus's Last Supper, and you're replicating that. So it's not an empty performance. The shape is the place where meaning dwells in religion. So what seems to you an empty performance, for them is full of meaning, because you're replicating, you're remembering, you are the word communion is precisely that, this idea of togetherness that you reenact every time. So it's not an empty performance as it would be, as many performances that we witness today, but I think it's a performance full of meaning for who believes, not for me obviously, but for them.
No, I get it, but I just, for example, and I don't know, people who really struggling, really busy, and have lots of things going on in their life, their true suffering, I doubt we would have time for this.
Yeah, but if those people who are suffering believe, they have a way to save themselves, because if you believe, you also believe that your suffering are given by God, and in a way are the ultimate path. Withstanding them and dealing with them is the path towards your own salvation, because the real life, the real salvation, the real happiness is not in this life. No matter how much you suffer in this life, your real happiness is in the afterlife. So you've got something to look forward, to hope for if you are religious. So those people who are suffering, they can still find hope in religion, because that's the way. If they believe that's the way through which they can, that's the only secure way to atone or to join God in the afterlife. So you see, you are still having an atheist point of view, and I don't think that we could understand them with our atheist point of view, because ultimately the requirement to understand what they do is faith. And if you believe that God exists, then everything else it comes second. You know, even it always makes, once I remember, now I'm going to be cancelled once again. I remember once at university, I was listening to this scholar who was writing a dissertation about feminist Muslim women. And at some point I said to her, that she was writing a dissertation about the way in which the Muslim women tie the headscarf. I was like, hold on a minute. She was obviously not Muslim, she was Swedish, so extremely secularized and open-minded. And I went there and I said, hold on a minute, can you define a feminist Muslim? Because to me, it's a little bit of a contradiction in terms. You can't, it's perfectly fine to be a feminist and it's perfectly fine to be a Muslim. It seems to me that the two things simply don't go together. This is a Western perversion of religion, because being a feminist, I always thought, is believing in the putting your self-determination as a woman first. But if you're a Muslim, Islam means abandonment to God. Therefore, your self-determination as a woman or as a man or as a homosexual or as an individual doesn't count. You are surrendering to God. You are not putting yourself first. And I said, so how is it possible to have a feminist and a Muslim at the same time? They express two philosophically opposite ideas, and she was not able to answer. She just assumed that it's everything is possible. And you know, I think this is the typical, and this is the downside of our secularized society. I'm defending religion today. This is the downside of our secularized society, I think, is the fact that we don't accept limitations anymore. If you're religious, you accept limitations. You accept that you can't have it all. But if you are not religious, if you are secular, you believe that everything is possible. You can be a communist and a Catholic, you can be a feminist and a Muslim, you can be all things that you don't accept the idea that there are things that you can't do because they jar with your system of beliefs. We want everything in its opposite.
So would you say people who are not religious somehow are more free and self-determined?
I think, no, the opposite. I think the moment in which you have a system, a very specific moral system, it looks like you are encaged, but in fact, you have the borders of your freedom already predetermined. Whereas if you are non-religious, you don't have these borders predetermined by your beliefs and morality, and you end up thinking that everything is possible, when in fact, not everything is possible. So if you don't believe, you miss the borders of what you can do, of your freedom, which is a very deceiving. I'm still an atheist. I'm not saying that but our inability to accept limitations is typical of our society. We want it all and we can't have it all. At least if you have God in your life, you accept that some things are forbidden.
Well, we want our cake and we want to eat it, and we know how it ended for some women. Promising young ladies, interesting. But I'm going to say next thing, which at some point I thought maybe these people have a better end of a deal. We have a spiritual practice which probably grounds them. We have a community, we're very dedicated, and maybe during these 2 hours, they feel very strong connection with religious powers, with themselves. We also sit there and look at the Rubens for 2 hours. Beautiful Rubens. There's Rubens painting in the middle of altar. You know what? To some extent, I don't know if maybe religious people also get a better deal in, I don't know, sort of a mental state. But simultaneously, how comes if religion is so good, why so many conflicts are caused by religion?
I never said that religion was unquestionably good. I think we found a balance in the West, and the balance is to relegate religion to privacy. The problem is when this is not found, because that's the downside of religion, that if you believe that God is there, not only you, as I was saying, you accept limitations, but also you believe that you have the one way. If you belong to a specific religion, you have the one way of, of interpreting the truth, and that's the only way, and you are entitled to kill others or to fight others if they don't agree with you. So that's unquestionably the downside of religion. However, there is one thing that you said before that made me think. You said, I grew up... At least one. You said, I grew up in a country where there was only one religion, which is communism. That's exactly the kernel of the problem today. We got rid of religion in our Western societies, but we can't live without religion, which means that we will always end up superseding or replacing God with some others equally restrictive system of values. So for instance, if it's not religion, it's going to be any other ideology, with one caveat. Religion at least has the possibility of mercy and atonement. If you say the wrong thing today, you are condemned on the basis of faith, of ideological faith. You pick your ideology, it doesn't matter which ideology and there is no possibility of atonement for you. Think about the cancel culture. That's committing sin, you get cancelled, and there is no possibility of atonement. At least in the Catholic Church, you go to the priest, you atone yourself, and you are forgiven. At least in the Protestant Church, it's such an intimate thing that you are not allowed to judge others, because everybody has to deal with their own individual conscience. It's a dialogue between you and God, not a dialogue between you and a society that needs to punish you. So I think we can't get rid of religion. You can get rid of God, but not of religion.
Yeah, I was reading Sapiens by Harari, and he has this point, what we often think what religion is only limited to the establishment of church. However, his argument is what religion is anything we strongly believe in, and somehow being atheist is also being very religious. Going to gym is also religion, or dedicating your life to financial profits is also a religion. It's something we strongly believe in. This was the criteria. And in this case, I believe our society is religious. It's just that everyone has their own version of it.
Yeah, also it's, for me, religion is believing in something and not needing a demonstration and still believing in it. So I say, whatever crazy idea, I don't need to demonstrate it. You have to believe it, but I don't need to give you a demonstration. That's how religion functions. You've got your book that tells you how the universe came about, and you don't care if science says otherwise, And with ideology, it's pretty much the same thing. You end up believing things that don't need to be demonstrated. I utter them, and they are true because they have been uttered by a certain type of intellectuals, certain people. Just a random question. You were mentioning the conservative. Did you decide who your favorite conservative is to win the to be the leader of the Conservative Party? Did you decide?
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question.
I mean, it's going to be the next prime minister, so we better have an opinion on it, all of us.
I don't know. I would like. I haven't thought about it, and I don't like anyone, if I'm being very honest. So yeah, I don't know. I would like what's his name? Pincher. I would like Pincher to be honest.
That would be very funny. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I would like, someone with.
I mean, I would like to see Pincher in a room with Trudeau, because I think he's going to harass Trudeau somehow.
At least Pincher knows what he wants. And I think this is already an admirable trait in politician. And he goes for it.
No, I decided mine. I want Kemi. Do you know Kemi, the black woman?
No.
I remember when I didn't know who she was, obviously, until lockdown. And then during lockdown, I started watching the discussions in Parliament. And
TikTok?
No, not TikTok, on YouTube. and the parliament, the live stream, and she was always the best at answering. She would be always able to make every opponent shut up, because she speaks with evidence, with facts, or with reasonable ideas. I think she's extremely smart. So
but
if it has to
need
be
someone who can make a move, and David Pincher can make a move.
Oh yeah.
Taking action
on the wrong body parts.
He's a man of an action.
Man of action, yes.
I think just like Donald Trump, man of action.
Very, very, yes.
No arguments required. We don't even need to say
anything. No, get you drunk.
Yeah, drunk on a religious belief in conservative party.
Do you think Pincher is religious?
Well, he surely has his beliefs. Everyone is religious. Like my argument is we all are religious.
Pick your faith.
Yeah, pick your faith very carefully what you believe in, because in the end of the day, your faith will not require arguments, because like we say, you will blindly believe in it. So we should be very careful. And and this is another thing I thought during the service, we were very insisting softly to make donations, and I thought also sort of what is so spiritual about it if suddenly we become so focused on money. But when it's just like you and I will go to gym and we pay for the gym workout, 1 hour a day, guys, you can just work out in the park. What, we all put our money in things we believe in. And I'm very cool with people doing whatever we want, as long as they don't tell me what this is something I should believe in. I think everyone should believe and practice whatever they like, as long as it doesn't harm others. But I think we only should not go around and tell what our way is the ultimate way, and not to say what, because something is being practiced in religious institution has a higher moral standard, because it's very subjective.
Yeah, and we were talking about, even when we talk about pedophilia, that it's not, moral standards are not necessarily better in religious institutions. That's not what you should expect. You should expect to have a way. It's not that religious institutions are better. What they promise is that they give you a way to save your own soul, not that they are the best.
But do you think people who are quite religious have more balanced, mental approach to life, or do you think it's not correlated?
I think no, I don't think so. I think because I think psychologically pretty balanced, despite it wouldn't seem probably so. But I am an atheist, and I know plenty of religious people who made religion the reason of their own instability. Obsessed people, for instance, or people who are in crisis because they can't manage to keep together their life choices with God. So I don't think that religious people have necessarily an advantage. I don't believe so. What religion gives you, though, I think is, and it's important, especially in certain religions, is a sense of community. And not in every religion, but in certain religions like Judaism and Catholicism, gives you a sense of community. I don't know if do you know Emil Durkheim? So Emil Durkheim is one of the most amazing writers, one of the most amazing intellectuals. He is the father of sociology, together with Max Weber, Zimmel, etc. And Durkheim wrote a few books about religion. One of which, though, is not directly about religion, is about suicide. The book is called Suicide. And in it, Durkheim explains, but just by looking at the data, just by looking at who commits suicide where, that Catholics tend to commit suicide far less than Protestants, and Jewish tend to commit suicide far less even than Catholics. And why is it that there is a correlation between suicide and religion? It's very simple, because Catholics are rely heavily on the community, Protestants rely heavily on the individual, and Jewish rely on the community even more than Catholics do. Therefore, they don't feel left alone Okay, Catholics tend to kill other people more than they tend to kill themselves. That's what he demonstrated, but at least they don't feel abandoned if they are going through a difficult situation.
Well, I mean, it's very important to get a sense of community, but I don't think religious institutions is the only way. And there is a lot of arguments for having religious or spiritual practice. And I think sometimes going in a gym can also be a spiritual practice. It depends how you look at that.
I only want to be hot, to be honest.
I think, I don't know, I think gym for me gives
and
me...
I fail at it as well. So
I mean, it's pretty hot today, isn't it? I think there are ways to find a balance or spiritual support, not necessary from religious institutions, but if it helps someone, I think that's great. However, I think we also have to be very aware what religion used to be originally and how it really dictated a lot of standards. Society has changed a lot, right? Contemporary world is very different. People didn't have social media. People only would receive news and rules from one institution. Today, we live in an incredibly polarized world. So religion is almost like just one of the outlets of information and societal standards. So I wonder if religion should change somehow or adopt the contemporary world, or is it, because sometimes it does feel a bit obsolete because their practice is pretty much the same.
But you see, I think that that's the failure of religion, would be to look like the times that is living in. I think that what you are suggesting would be the demonstration of the failure of religion. Religion needs to be outdated, because think, for instance, in terms of Christianity. I always come across as the ultra Christian here, but even though I'm not. So think about Christianity. Salvation is not in the future, is not in today, is not in progress. Salvation is 2000 years ago when Jesus came and saved your sins. So you don't need to wish to progress. You need to go back to 2000 years ago. Salvation is in the past, is not in the future. So I think whenever religion adapts to the present moment, is doing what capitalism does, adapting to the new situation, and it's failing because it's saying, yeah, I mean, what we said so far is not really true. We still want your money, therefore we want to be modern. But that's the failure of it, because you have the door of paradise is very tiny. You have to bend to get into the door. You don't have to wait for the door of paradise to stretch to welcome you. Okay, because that would be the failure of all that religion has preached so far. Does it make sense? I believe that if you are religious, and that's why I'm atheist, you have to buy into it very, very strictly. And you have to behave in a way that you renounce to something, you accept your limitations. You can't have modernity and religion at the same time. Decide.
But then I wonder, an argument, if it had become modern, if it would adopt to contemporary times, it would have captured more market, and even it would have become linked to capitalism, because they never say no to money.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. The door of paradise is small, doesn't have to welcome everybody, has to welcome the few who make sacrifice, who sacrifice their lives to get into that tiny door.
Maybe we just
therefore religion does not need to appeal to everyone, it needs to appeal to the saint, and the saint are very few. You have to be, you know. So I think that marrying religion with modernity, that's why I always distrust homosexuals who want the Catholic Church to change their views. I'm sorry, no. If you want to be Catholic, you can still be Catholic as a homosexual, just don't practice sex. It's as simple as that. So you have to do something for God. You don't have to wait for God to change its mind. And once again, you still have the option of not being religious, of not being Catholic. You're not obliged. So I think that, you know, you have to yield something if you want salvation. You can't, and that's why the thing that I distrust the most is the postmodern capitalistic supermarkets of religion, where everybody wants salvation without giving anything in return, and everybody picks their own religion from this ideal supermarket. So I want to be a Buddhist, I want to be a New Age, I want to be this and that, and everything that somehow validates my my consumeristic, capitalistic approach to God. That's an illusion that doesn't improve your life, I think, because at that point, just live your life freely, free from any. So you can't have salvation and sin at the same time. You know, pick which one. I chose sin.
I just thought it's all takes to network your way with St. Peter's.
Sorry?
I thought all it takes is to network your way with St.
Yeah, exactly. Like the indulgences, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, didn't make me to turn to religion, but I think I will be attending more religious services going forward because I am very fascinated now.
Yeah, same. I haven't been, I was telling you, I have never been to an Orthodox mass. Yeah, never been.
One day.
And I would like, but as I was saying, I've been to a Shabbat. And now one of the reasons why Judaism has been able to survive despite the amount of anti-Semitism in Europe in the past centuries, is that Judaism, unlike other religions, is primarily worshipped within the family. So it's the husband, is the father who performs most of the rituals. So you don't really need to do it in the temples. And that's one of the reasons why it has been able to survive so well and in such a strong way. And I didn't understand this fully. I knew this, but I didn't understand it until I've been to on Saturday to my friend's house for Shabbat, and I saw him performing the rites before eating, and it was extremely fascinating. And whatever he does, it looks like a Catholic mass. Breaks the bread, takes the wine, passes the bread around. So I never realized that the Catholic mass was such a copy of what the of the Shabbat. That's very fascinating. Except you need to be the father of a family. Whereas in the Catholic Church, you need to be a priest ordered by a bishop, by the Pope. Yeah.
Well, fascinating part of religion. Do you have any last thoughts on this?
No, I think we contributed enough to destroying our reputation today as well.
Where is the Church of Culture gone bad? So
join the
everyone
church.
Is welcome by, and you can make donations. We accept any currencies, and
and we forgive everyone. By the way,
we forgive everyone, a total salvation,
and we encourage you to commit sin.
Yeah.
Therefore, you will never find a church that encourages you to commit sin. We do.
Sin away and follow Culture Gone Bad for more updates and opportunities to practice your absence of moral values.
Exactly. Your atonement.
Eternal atonement. Until next time.
Till next time.
Culture Gone Very Bad.